Good evening, everybody. Madam Clerk?
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Here.
Councilman Pataglia. Mayor LaBrus.
Here. Before I continue, I'd like to, Deborah Carlson, our city clerk, lost her father this week. So I'd like to have a moment of silence in his honor, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
This meeting is being held in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec. Notice having been published according to law with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall.
Thank you. Would everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to the city manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, invited guest. Tonight's Council of the Whole meeting is for February 27th. First thing is we have a stigma-free pledge, and we're fortunate enough to have Susan McVeigh, our health officer, here to speak upon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan McVeigh. I'm the health officer for the city of Hackensack. Please excuse my voice. I have a bit of cough. The reason I'm here tonight is the Stigma-Free Committee of Hackensack has been in effect for about 2 years now. And our campaign for this year is Stamp Out Stigma. And what we plan on doing is having the pledge, which we had Friendship House, put on these nice stickers that are sticky on the one side. We went to the Chamber of Commerce last week and we spoke to them. And what we're gonna do is have our committee go to the different businesses in town and ask them to put these on their windows. Stigma Free is an organization that's county-wide, and what we want to do is raise awareness about mental health issues and reduce stigma for mental health. Let people know that everyone is welcome here in Hackensack. So I've printed a large pledge, and it's on our website at hackensack.org/stigma. I posted it on our bulletin board in the health department, and I left some on the table over here. So if the mayor would be kind enough to read it at the council meeting tonight, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan.
Do they have copies now?
Yes.
I have a copy.
Okay, great.
I was honored to be at the
Thank you.
State of the County address today given by our county executive, Jim Tedesco, and one of his key points on that was the amount of municipalities in the county of Bergen that now have become stigma-free communities. It's well over 50, he might have even said over 60, so that's quite an accomplishment in a short amount of time to get all these municipalities on board, so it's a good thing. And I want to thank you, Susan, and all the people involved with Stigma-Free for keeping it going. Thank you. Okay.
Next is a redevelopment yearly report. Albert Dibb, our director of redevelopment, is here tonight. He's going to do me a huge favor because he's going to carve out of the city manager's report a big chunk of information. So I'm going to move out of the way. Albert's going to present the redevelopment that the city of Hackensack is proceeding with and provide a report. Thank you, Albert.
You're welcome. Forgive me, for whatever reason, I thought this was gonna be at the 8 o'clock, so it's just gonna take a second to boot up. In the meantime, I'm just gonna grab one of these and I'll start talking about.
Are we going to do it 8 o'clock too?
Yeah, but I'm going to greatly reduce, Albert's going to be a bit.
So, I'm assuming you have all these packets here. Yeah, it looks like it's starting to boot now. And we can just take this from the top. I mean, I had done the best I could to try to condense in one line or less what was happening at each one of these respective sites, and I could take you through them one at a time, or I can just jump in and answer any questions that you might have. But starting from the top, number 149 Main Street. This is the former Woolworth building. You remember years ago, this was a building that was J-Mart at one point. It occupied it housed several different retail stores over the years, and we had a developer approach us several years ago looking to build, I want to say 77 units, 72 units. So the site's been completely demolished, it's under construction now. The goal here is to try to keep that original Woolworth's facade, and I think we're still some time out now from completion, but that is well underway. 150, 170 Main Street, otherwise known as the hole in the ground, lovingly, is, if you've heard today, continues. We have piles being driven. The next step for them is to complete the piles for the crane. If you can envision, if you've seen the crane here at 18 East Camden, you'll get a sense for how high that crane will be, but has to assemble a 14-story building, 386 units. So they need to come back, the developer needs to come back to the planning board meeting in March to explain to us the minor changes that they've done to the facade, and in addition to some other minor changes that will require planning board approval. But we imagine that proceeding fairly quickly after that. 161 Main Street, I received news today that their tenants are about to start moving in. They've requested us to take a close look at parking lot A to see what could be done to repave that. We've had a number of conversations about possibly doing that. I think we want to wait till we're a little farther along on some of the neighboring developments before we consider a repaving, but maybe there's at least some patching that we could do there for the time being. 210, 214 Main Street. That is the iconic bank building at the end of Banta Place. That's Hackensack's first skyscraper, built originally in 1926. There's an adaptive reuse occurring, which, combined with the building just to the north, will be 126 units. 90% of the windows are on. I think if you talk to the developer, he will tell you that an adaptive reuse is way harder than constructing from scratch, because there's never a day that they go in there and they don't uncover or find a problem that they hadn't considered before. So progress on that has been understandably slow. I want to say they're about 6 months behind schedule, but with any luck, we'll start seeing COs, I think conservatively by fall, if I had to guess. 240 Main Street is another Capadagli property. Capadagli Meridia had built 98 100 State Street. This is a different design. It's a rather handsome design, which will house 110 units over retail. That's rocketing out of the ground. They are now putting on the fourth story in some segments. In other segments, they're completing, I think, the second and third story. I don't have a completion date on that, but March Construction, who's building that for George Capadagli, has a reputation for moving very quickly. They're also building 18 East Camden Street for Hakimian Properties further down on the list. And I think the completion date will surprise us all for that, but I say that with some cautious optimism. 324 Main Street, Farmers Market, is open. You can go in there and you can see, you can get a sense for how the new internal layout will flow. They're wrapping that building now with a new facade. They've essentially made the front of that building off of River Street. You can still exit off Main Street, but I think the bulk of their traffic will be coming in and out from River Street, and they've effectively doubled the size of their retail space, and that will serve unquestionably the nearly 2,000 to 3,000 new residents that the downtown will ultimately be hosting. 492 Aldi Supermarket, that's complete. I think that speaks for itself. I'm sure a number of you have had an opportunity to go there. There's still some tweaking of the facade that we need to do there. There are a couple great issues, a couple planting issues. Some of those trees have died already. So I think it's an example of how after things are built, we're going to need to hold developers to their agreements and make sure that things are done properly. But we're making progress there as well. I've already mentioned 18 East Camden Street. That's a prefab garage that went up seemingly overnight. It's being staged at Fashini Park, and every day that gets bigger. And I think right now it's a little disconcerting to see such a massively huge structure. And you can't look at that in isolation. You have to sort of imagine what that will look like when some of the residential components happen, which I understand, speaking with Brian Akemian, we won't see that for a little while because there's still quite a bit of site work going on. That tall parking lot structure will sit there for quite some time before you start seeing
Right.
any neighboring vertical construction. So I wanted to say now, don't think that that project is stalled. There's just an extensive amount of underground and site work that has to happen before you see any additional height. 50 to 52 Main Street has been, it's a smaller project. I think all told that is 40 units just on the overlooking the historic courthouse green. Part of the land assemblage there has a soil remediation issue that the city is actively investigating, and we hope to have a remediation plan to sort that out within the next month or so. But it's a nice project because it's in a gateway location, very prominent. People will see that coming from the courthouse. It'll be one of the first developments that they see as they start heading north into the downtown. We met on Monday at BCUA to talk about 320 River Street. That's the Toyota dealership. There's a large 8-foot round sewage line that's serving 250,000 people coming from the north. It presents some constraints to the project, so we're at least having some just initial conversations with BCUA to see what, if anything, can be done to move, bypass, or otherwise eliminate some of the constraints that would make for a better residential project on River Street. That could be substantial. I don't have a count yet, but from phase one could be as many as 300 units, and it could approach maybe 400 by the time everything is said and done. 321 Main Street is just a redevelopment plan at this point. I know there are several developers who have tried to do an assemblage there. I think eventually we will see something happen, but at this point it exists in broad plan form only. There's a small piece of that, also known as 22 West Camden Street, which did receive site plan approval. You see that, I think, for number 16. And that is a 60-unit residential apartment complex, which hopefully will start construction within the next year or so. There are some underlying legal issues there that need to be resolved first. Ward Street is, I'm skipping, 76 Main Street, long anticipated 76 Main Street. The public will remember that there was a fire at the, I think it was a Brazilian barbecue, Rodizio, that caused the relocation of 12 units. My understanding is that there were some claims issues that needed to be resolved before the owners could receive financing. I understand that those claims, that litigation is resolving. The city was not a party in that litigation, and then that will now allow for financing to happen, and that project will move forward with more speed in the coming months. Ward Street, the demolition. Ward Street is near Sears, about a block south of Sears. It is the former Comprehensive Behavioral Health Center. That building and buildings just to the south are in the process of being demolished. That will eventually accommodate, it says 115 units here. I think I'm off there. I think that was originally planned. I think that's 82 units or 83 units. I think that might have been older information. Over retail. Anything on Main Street is residential over retail. So the idea is to have a traditional Main Street that will be supported by the influx of residential or residents that move in to support retail along the first floor. Okay, 17 Mercer Street is that is the Colonial Storage, also along Lot A, which is why we might want to consider whether or not we would pave Lot A just yet, because between that and 149 Main Street, there's so much active construction going on that we would want to consider holding off on paving for any renovations that we do to that lot. But 17 Mercer is interesting because at one point that was a morgue and it turned into Colonial Storage, and there were only windows that face the front. So it's been a challenge for the developer to try to secure either air rights for the neighbor to the south so that they can put in windows, because you need a 3-foot setback to put in windows, or to design a project that allows for enough air and light without all of those windows. So they are still very much engaged in that process. I expect that they'll come back to us within the next 2 or 3 months for site plan. Keeping my fingers crossed. I'd like to see that project happen. I'd mentioned 22 West Camden. 435 Main Street is Holman Moving, right across from Sears. It's Sears and Anderson Street. That is a massive project, and there have been a number of developers who have had a hand in that, and there have been, I think, 3 changes of potential ownership in that site, with most recent, or the firm that received site plan approval was a firm by the name of Waypoint, who was, it looked like the owners were going to sell to another developer, but now it looks like it's Waypoint again. So they have site plan approval, and I understand that the sale will be taking place over the next several months, and with any luck, we will see construction of a beautiful 235-unit complex at the corner of Main and Anderson, another gateway site. So as you can imagine, if you're coming from Cedar Lane, Teaneck, or coming off of River Street, one of the first things you'll see in the downtown is a very prominent, handsome structure in a very prominent location. Continental Plaza is a rehabilitation. The new designation allows for increased medical, residential, hotel, and other uses, and that's important because commercial space is hard to lease up. You need to find new and creative uses and new mixes of tenant bases in order to make those projects pencil out. So there's been talk of anything from a extended stay hotel on at least some of the floors in one of the 3 towers that are there now. The possible addition of yet another tower that could accommodate a hotel use. So it'll be interesting to see how the applicant comes back to us over the coming months to see what actually transpires there. Shops at Riverside is a rehab designation. They need to do extensive renovations over there to be more competitive with some of the other area malls, including Garden State Plaza, who has taken on more of a luxury tenant, and Nordstrom's is an example of that. Shops at Riverside had the reputation and was the niche location for high-end luxury. And to maintain that, I think one of the things they need to do, and they recognize one of the things they need to do, is do a serious overhaul of their property to retain and to attract new luxury tenants. And that's an important project because it's a huge rateable for the city. Their not being successful would have an impact, I think, substantially on the city's revenue. This is the last page, which I will try to go through quickly. These are city or county-owned development projects. 125 River Street is the former probation site. It's just adjacent to the 150, 170 Main Street project. We have a rehabilitation plan which calls for an expanded New Jersey Transit bus. I don't want to call it a garage. It's more of a depot, but it's a bus station with retail above it, and I think retail along a certain segment of it too. At this point, it's conceptual. It's county-owned, so it's important that the city, and one of the things that is on my list to do this year in concert with the administration, is to re-engage Bergen County to see if this could be an opportunity for affordable housing, veterans housing, and really try to take advantage of a good market, and take advantage of the momentum that we already have in the downtown. So keeping my fingers crossed there. Lot C, city-owned, across from Boulder City and the Ice House. This was, I want to say, 2.5 years in the making from concept to contract execution. And I think we'll see on tonight's docket, we have some of these documents being executed, including the finance agreement and a long-term parking agreement. This is a last count, and I think Deputy Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, 380, 377 units in a otherwise underutilized parking lot, I think is will be a very important project, also in a prominent location with 200 public spaces being built back into the project. So it's a developer with a good reputation for building quality, and I think it's something that we're all excited about. Green Street is a problematic site in that it's there's some contamination there. We've been seeking grant funds to clean it up. We have at least one developer who's interested in putting together a sizable project there. It's still preliminary at this point. I don't want to say too much about it now, other than it would be a sizable project in a transit village area right next to a train station, which is consistent with what we've been trying to do in Hackensack, develop near transit hubs and transit stations. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there as well. Zabriskie Street is a sizable project. We expect them to come to the planning board in April. 300 plus units there as well, if we can get that done. Also near a train station, Newbridge Landing, formerly North Hackensack. Lot D is a centerpiece for us because it's in the heart of our downtown. It's sort of buried behind a long retail frontage off of Main Street between Main and State. We have a developer who's designated there, who, best we could tell, is negotiating the purchase of the necessary properties in order to come back and request site plan approval for a significant residential retail project with associated parking, be a large-scale parking deck that could serve the downtown in its central location. And last but not least is Anderson Street, which is sort of, I don't want to say on hold now, but we're waiting to hear back from the developer who had trouble with its initial financer, but last I heard had possibly secured another financer. That would be between 140 and 160 residential developments over retail on Anderson Street, which I think is interesting to see because Anderson Street over the years has deteriorated somewhat. You don't see a lot of vacancies, and you see a sizable population there, but it could definitely use some TLC, and a project of this scale and magnitude would be the infusion of money and residents that could really make a difference in that part of town. So I know that was sort of rapid fire, but we have a lot to cover, and I really could talk for another half an hour about all the things that you're not seeing here that are infill projects that it might not be fair to talk about because they're still premature. But this is, I think, a good representation of just the kind of activity that the city is seeing right now. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions unless you want to.
Well, I just want to mention, you mentioned a probation site, and that in the past was we had basically what would have been an award-winning project, scheduled there. We were trying to get the county to let go of the property, sell it to us. We had New Jersey Transit involved. We had the blessings of the DCA. Jamie Foxx, God rest his soul, was gave it his blessing. He thought it was great, and we still want to see that project come forward because it involved affordable housing, it involved veteran housing, it involved public parking access, and also took all of these buses that are sitting in our streets queued up
Yeah.
with a place to stay with proper ventilation. So there's a great picture of it.
Yeah.
It was a great project, we still believe in it. I still, like you said, we got to get back and sit at the table with the county to see if we can get this done.
I think there's real potential to do something there. I know DMR has always seen the value in doing this. I know the administration has as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Incidentally, hackensack.org/redevelopment, if anybody wants to take a closer look at some of the other projects that I mentioned tonight. We're constantly putting new ones on, and this will give you a good sense as to where we are and where we're going.
And the other thing I want to speak to real quickly, we're always in discussions with the developers now, and we reinstituted the Council on Affordable Housing Trust Fund that developers moving forward are contributing to, which is important, which will help us either develop affordable housing and/or put money into our affordable housing stock that we have actually quite a bit of in Hackensack, since we do have a housing authority.
That's right.
So
And we have
that's important.
It is. We have a planner on board now who's going to help establish definitively what our obligations are, if any, at this point, and really just to help us, because regardless of what the obligations are, there's been an expression on the part of this administration to reach out to the community and identify needs and be supportive and
Right.
to make sure that affordable housing is somehow, part of the overall redevelopment program.
Right, and actually, if I could add to that, it's not all public information yet, but we've already had some preliminary meetings with a group that's interested and is coming in, I think, next week or the week after to actually present to us a 72-unit from low to moderate affordable housing here in Hackensack. And we know, we've heard from the public that, we don't, even though from the state's perspective, we're covered as far as the affordable units that we have, but from our general population, that there's a wish that we had some more. So I think it's very encouraging to see that we have people that see the prospect here and wanting to invest in that, and the city's very anxious to see some of that happen as well. And when it becomes public information, of course, we'll share it with everyone.
Yep. Okay, good job, Albert, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Albert.
Number two,
Number three,
number three.
we're moving
The number's
along,
wrong.
is the introduction of the noise ordinance. This has been banted back and forth for a fair period of time, but there was multiple issues that needed to be addressed to make sure that this was, met the criteria and the design that the mayor and council wanted. Steve, do you have anything?
No, I mean, just to point out for the record, as I've mentioned before, that this ordinance is based upon a model noise ordinance that is prepared by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So our ordinance very closely tracks that, with the exception of we are continuing with the city's policy of prohibiting construction work on Sundays at any time, which is the current practice. But that is different from the model ordinance. Aside from that, by adopting this, that will allow the health officer to be able to enforce it. She, and I don't know if other members of her staff are trained in the usage of noise measuring equipment. So that gives us some tools to be able to deal with noise problems as they come up. Once this ordinance is introduced tonight, we will have to send a letter to the Department of Environmental Protection to advise them that it has been introduced, and we will need their approval before we proceed to final adoption. I don't know how long that will take. We have the letter ready to go tomorrow. And then as soon as we hear back from DEP, we would be able to move. So it may end up being tabled for a meeting or two if it takes DEP a while to get back to us. But once we have that, it'll be good to go. The DEP will note it on its webpage that we have a properly enacted and enforceable noise ordinance. And at that point, we're up to date and in full compliance with state law. Anything else? Okay, so yes, there are certain, I guess there's machines, decibel meters, And you, in order to enforce this ordinance, you need to have a certification or some particular training. I'm not super familiar with it, but that will, if you have that training, that'll allow you to go out, and if you hear a particular disruptive noise, to measure it using this equipment. And then if it exceeds the limits in the ordinance, then you can cite the person for it. I believe you can also give warnings as well, depending on the nature of the violation.
Thank you. Any questions from the mayor and council?
Well, yes, Councilman Sims had brought up a point, and I think we should try to, before we move forward, get a definitive direction on which we're going, because he asked a good question, what's the difference between a snow blower and a lawnmower? All right? And there is somewhat of a difference. I hear both sides of, what some of the people were saying is, grass is a much more optional issue, cutting grass. I mean, it's not as much of an emergency issue, but we have to determine what time a snow blower can be started up in the morning. Can somebody be out there at 5 o'clock in the morning with their snow blower or not? We need to, I think, get that into the ordinance, exactly what we want.
Well, as we said before, the ordinance has to be at least as strict as the model ordinance that the state has come up with. So, for example, by us saying that on Sundays we are not going to allow construction work in the town, that's stricter. So they're going to sign off on that. They're going to say you are not weakening the principles behind the law. Under the ordinance, keeping in mind that there are decibel limits. So if you can meet the decibel limits, then you can pretty much create that noise at any time. But, and I'm not an expert in this area as to how loud a particular lawnmower or snow blower or leaf blower may be, or whether with certain mufflers you can get underneath it. But the way it works right now, if you are a homeowner, you are not supposed to be engaging in landscaping or yard maintenance equipment, in yard maintenance if you're using equipment that is above the decibel level between 8 at night and 8 in the morning. If you're a commercial operator, it's between 6 at night and 8 in the morning, and weekends 6 at night and 9 in the morning. So that covers power tools, home maintenance tools, landscaping, and yard maintenance equipment.
Can you just go back a minute?
Yeah.
You said if you're a construction worker, you don't supposed to start till 9 in the morning? Is that what you said?
If you are a commercial operator, so, if you're a landscaping company, as opposed to if you're just mowing the lawn at your own home, you can go above the noise limits between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. You can do it. The noise limits do not apply. Because obviously, probably many lawnmowers are going to be above those limits, but it's kind of like almost quiet time between 8 and 8. And it's slightly less for those commercial operators. So if you do it yourself versus if you hire, ABC Landscaping Company, they can only operate above the noise limits between 9 a.m. and between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and then on weekdays 9 a.m. and 6 p.m.
They can't
Weekends,
start.
9.
And that's a weekend. That's weekends and holidays.
During the week, 8 to 6. Even
Yeah.
if you're a professional landscaper, it's 8 to 6.
Yep.
And the residents, 8 to 8.
And the residents 8 to 8, and that's 8 to 8 for the residents. It's 8 to 8, 7 days a week. For the commercial operator, it's between 9 and 6 on weekends and federal holidays, or 8 and 6, so you can start an hour earlier if it's a weekday. The way the ordinance reads, it doesn't have a specific period with respect to motorized snow removal equipment. It doesn't it doesn't say that you there is a time that this ordinance prohibits it, except it does say that they should always be operated with a muffler or a sound reduction device. And I'm presuming this is because, if you are in a driveway and you need to get out of a driveway because of an emergency situation, or you just want to be able to travel, that you might need to be able to do that at earlier times. Now, this doesn't prohibit us, keeping in mind we still have a nuisance code. So if somebody for no reason is operating snow removal equipment at 4 in the morning, and it doesn't seem reasonable to be doing so, we can certainly pursue the nuisance as an alternative avenue. But as the ordinance reads, as I see it here, it doesn't give you time limitations specifically for snow removal equipment. And there is a logical reason why that might be the case. Now, I suppose we could strengthen that if you wanted to amend it today. I mean, obviously, it's only being introduced, but then you would have the problem of, what happens if it snows 8 inches, you have a teacher who wants to get to work and needs to blow their driveway at 7 a.m. in the morning. Well, now, technically, they can't do it unless they're able to get beneath the threshold limits in the ordinance. So that could be your potential concern. So I get where it's a bit of a tricky situation, but you have to decide if that's a restriction you wanted to impose.
So basically what you're saying is you're taking if you wouldn't be able to clear your driveway till 8 o'clock and to go to work. So if you start at 7 or 6, you can't go to work till 8 o'clock.
Without risking the citation, that's
I don't know
correct.
how you could, I don't know
No,
how you
never
could
happened.
impose that. I think you have to
The
allow.
commercial people that remove the snow, sometimes they operate even in the middle of the night because they go by the inches. So you got 3-4 inches, they don't wanna wait by the time it's 8 or 9 to start removing the snow. They're gonna go to the driveway or parking place and they're gonna start working. They don't wanna wait by the time you got 10 inches on the ground.
And I would also
And
point
they
out,
charge you that way, they say, we're gonna come when it's 4, and then we come back again to remove the other 4. They go like a 4 or 5 at a time. They don't wanna wait by the time you got 10 inches.
well, I mean, I guess the other concern would be, look, if you have a massive snowstorm, everybody's going to be clearing the snow versus, mowing a lawn. You could have, 10 people on the block wanting to mow their lawns at different times versus snowing. How many times are we going to have that over the course of a winter? 3 or 4 maybe 5 if you have a really bad winter, sometimes less, where you're going to have that where you need to clear that much snow early in the day.
That's it.
But again, it's up to the council if they wish to propose anything differently than the model
I don't see how you
ordinance.
could restrict it because it's going to affect people. I mean,
People's life.
my job, I have emergencies, which I have to get to sometimes, and I can't imagine. I really couldn't tell my boss, well, this the noise ordinance, I can't use my snow blower till
So people,
8
they,
o'clock, so
they
I can't
work for
come
the
in.
fire department or police officer.
Or I'd have
they
to shovel it
go
by
out.
hand, a double driveway.
And cutting your grass isn't gonna affect your ability to go to work or, any type of emergency situation. I mean, they're totally different.
But
And
again-
it's a weekly event, once you.
But again, if somebody's out there because, they're off the next day and they want to be out there 2 o'clock in the morning, snow blowing for no reason except to blow the snow, that's,
That-
that's a
The noise
nuisance.
ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a nuisance. At that point, if they're acting in a nuisance manner, then
That's a
I think you
different
could
ballgame.
pursue it in that, in that direction and say, look, I think if you went to municipal court, because the reason we do the noise ordinances, the nuisance ordinance isn't really scientific. It's kind of, it when you see it versus this ordinance, which has specific scientifically established decibel limits that are measured by a machine. The nuisance ordinance doesn't really deal with that sort of thing. It's more a police officer shows up and says, hey, look, I got a phone call from 10 people that there was a snow blower going at 2 in.the.morning when there was an inch of snow on the ground
That
for
makes
3
sense.
hours. And then judge is going to say, yeah, that
That
seems
makes sense.
unreasonable to me and could enforce it in that manner.
Another
Exactly.
contributing factor is most of the spring, sometimes in the summer and good part of the fall, you have your windows open. So you're hearing lawnmowers much more than you would. Everybody, when you're out there snow blowing, everybody's windows are closed, I would think. Not to say they don't wake you up, I mean, the plow goes by, it wakes you up.
Yeah.
So-
And I mean, there is, especially with sidewalks and such, I mean, we do have a legal obligation to keep our sidewalks clear, especially, commercial buildings have responsibility. And quite frankly, you do expose yourself to legal liability if you do not clear your snow in a particular period of time and somebody.
I would have to
slips and
ask, and I
falls.
don't know if Ted would even know this, you'd have to call the DPW. How many calls do we get on nuisance snow blower? People operating snow blowers
Not really that much.
I can check, but I don't think
off
it's.
hours, so you just,
Right.
No.
we're still, this is just an introduction, so we're not voting on this yet, so we can have that information for us before we vote on it.
And it's not likely we're going to be voting on this in the next meeting
No,
unless
it's
state
probably-
government
yeah.
gets back to
There's
us in
time
2
on it.
weeks, which is probably
But
not
you
going to
have-
happen.
You have to be out of your mind to go up 2 o'clock in the morning when you got only 2 inches on the ground. Nobody gonna do that.
And we have recourse, we have the nuisance ordinance, so there's always a way to fix it, which I think is important to know.
All right.
And you always have those situations with the weather where it freezes, and sometimes, like we had that last winter where people wanted to get out there and snow blow before it melted and refreezed, and, you know, certain times that happens.
Next.
Next is the resolution for the Cranford Police Cooperative Pricing System. This was reviewed by Mr. Kleiman on our request, and the issue that came up is that there seems to be some open-ended issues that,
Yes, so we have an ordinance. This is a cooperative pricing system with that Cranford operates that I believe would allow us to, you know, go through them. You know, I guess bulk purchases are cheaper. You know, Jim can, you know, explain, I guess, the other benefits about it. The resolution's good to go tonight. We have one issue where the proposed agreement is a bit open-ended. But all this resolution does is authorize us to sign the agreement. We will not sign the agreement or present it for your signature until this one little issue with the agreement is resolved. And we're just concerned about giving, it's a provision that deals with somewhat open-ended assessments for administrative costs because Cranford is operating it, and it doesn't provide any limitation. So we're just trying to clarify with them exactly what they mean by that and whether we can put some limit into how much that is, because you never want to sign an open-ended contract and have them come back to you and say, now you owe us X, see, you agreed to it. But again, I still would recommend adopting the resolution tonight. We wrote it in such a way that allows us to continue to have discussions to reaching an acceptable agreement with Cranford. And if for whatever reason we find that they are uncooperative or unwilling to work with us to resolve our concerns, then we don't have to proceed forward. You're just giving us the authorization to get it done.
So why not wait until we have all the information? And that would be my preference.
I mean, that's certainly up to you. You know, I'm sure we'll have this resolved by the next meeting. I don't know if there's a particular time.
I mean, because it's only a resolution,
Crunch.
it's not like we have to wait for 2 hearings or anything, right? Once
Yeah, I mean, it's just a resolution authorizing us to sign an agreement.
So you won't be able to use it till next meeting anyway,
Right, till we resolve the
till
problem.
we resolve the issue.
Jim, is there any particular purchase that's awaiting through this?
I don't know of anything that's, you know, time sensitive, nothing that I'm aware of.
Right, then I would recommend, sure, table it, and I
Table
promise
it,
you,
get-
we will have the issue
Get
resolved by
everything
the next
wrapped up
meeting.
tight so we don't
Leave
get
ourselves
jammed up.
open. Right.
Number 4,
oh, number 5.
number 5.
The 2018 Summer Concert Series. Jackie has worked diligently to get this resolved. We need a decisive answer from the mayor and council so we can schedule these. So far listed is July 4th, Time Machine, July 17th, New York Bee Gees, July 24th is New Beginnings, which is a Chicago tribute band. July 31st is the Garden State Radio, and August 7th is the Motor City Review. If the mayor and council is good with those,
Yeah, what happened to,
That's not what we.
because we had agreed that we didn't have Garden State Radio. We had Time Machine, we knew we had. We had the New York Bee Gees. We had, I believe, Chicago.
They had Beatlemania, but maybe they couldn't get them.
Well, we had either, yeah, but we also had the B Street Band. The B Street Band was the Bruce Springsteen cover band. We haven't had them here yet. Garden State Radio was never in on that. Garden State Radio was, you know, I enjoyed them when we saw them that night. You know, remember them?
I like it.
Those are the 3 at the end.
Yeah, they're good.
But they're, you know, they're not going to be a draw though, Leo. I don't think they're a draw at all. They're much younger. I don't know.
They weren't on our list, Ted.
I'm sorry, sir?
They weren't on the list that we all agreed on. Because I
Okay.
had sent her on the 21st the list.
Tell me what you, let's just check off the ones that you do agree to, and so I can get to some.
Dave, does this sound right? We had the Motor City Review. That was the Motor.
I like the radio guy, but, you know, it's don't
Yeah.
matter to me.
I mean, Steph and I will go with what the 3 of you saw, because we didn't go to the event, so whatever you 3 think you're fine, I'm all right with you, Steph.
What they call, John, radio what?
They're called Garden State Radio.
They put a good show. It's what, 3, 4 kids?
Yeah, it was a
They
good,
play Michael Jackson.
my issue is, are they going to have a draw? Because I've never heard of them before. Not to say, not to say they don't have a big draw. I just know a band like the B Street Band, which plays all over the state, is gonna bring a big following with them. And our goal is to bring people from out of town into Hackensack so they can see what's going on.
Ted, we gotta look at the list again, Ted.
Okay,
Let's
John,
make sure we
yeah,
wrap it up
somewhere.
tomorrow, because I thought I texted her back with all this stuff, remember that day? And,
I would be a falsehood to explain that I got personally involved in this one. Jackie's kind of steered this for the most part. All I know is that she said they have to make a decision by tomorrow morning because we have to book these, because we're already a week behind of what we committed to giving Jerry LaGuardia a decision.
well, we know we have the Bee Gees, right? We, pretty much everybody agreed on that. We saw them that night. You have,
Is Time Machine Interactive?
we know we have the time, yeah, but that's July 4th. That's separate from the Green.
Okay.
Chicago cover band we had, all
That's
right?
the 24th.
Everybody was in agreement on the Motown band, which the only one we saw was the Motor City Review, right? And we didn't even see them that night, we just know of them. So the last one is the one we have to figure,
The
Me
Garden
personally,
State-
I like the B Street Band, Leo likes this Garden
Yeah,
State
it
Radio,
says Bee Gees,
You got
Soul
it?
Party.
or Soul Party, that's who it was.
It's Bee Gees, Soul Party, B Street Band, and Beatlemania.
For Beatlemania, I prefer Chicago.
I don't know if, because of the delay, that these bands have now been spoken for and they're not held, but I will find out tomorrow morning and reach out to you folks.
All right.
Bee Gees, Soul Party, B Street Band, and Beatlemania.
Beatlemania is already.
And if Beatlemania is not available, then we go with Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
The Chicago is better.
Yeah, but we've had Chicago more times than we've had Beatlemania. And, so this way we could even that out, and we did get a great response from the public on Beatlemania. Me, I'm a Chicago fan too, so.
Okay.
Ted, Steph, and I will defer to the three of them. We didn't attend first, so you don't have to
Understand.
bother. Whatever they pick is okay.
Okay. And last but not least is the service dog statue placement and this whole process. This is all before my service here, so I don't have any background, but if somebody could fill me in,
This is something we talked about a number of times, especially it comes up when we have the Memorial Day tribute down at Veterans Park. We honor our veterans and those that served. And a number of people had asked if we could include service dogs in that. So there was discussion, a number of years ago, of having the service dog statue in Veterans Park, so it would be part of this Memorial Day service.
A statue?
Yeah.
There, a lot of towns
A lot
have
of
them.
towns
The service dog, the military dog, the canine military dog saves thousands of human lives every year.
And where is that gonna be? Where are they gonna
Well,
put it?
we had, when it originally came up, when we talked to the folks that were in the Veterans Committee, it was to be put in Veterans Park, because that's where we have the
By
memorial.
the courthouse?
No, Veterans Park is down next to the pastry shop,
Okay.
where
so
we
put
have
it
the
there.
Memorial Day service. So when we honor everyone for Memorial Day, we also can honor the
Yeah.
service dogs.
I
That
agree.
was where it originated. I'm not saying that's where it has to end up, but that's for history.
Right.
That's where it
I don't
came
have
up.
an issue with it at
I'm
Memorial.
fine with that.
Who's gonna pay for the stuff?
We are.
The city?
okay,
And we'll see
so
about trying to get some.
did we
Maybe
ever,
get sponsored.
is there a file? Did we ever get prices or is this a brand new?
Let's get some prices, we'll see if we can get some sponsors or some donations on this, to defray the cost.
And maybe have
We
to
had
be a German
promises to the
Shepherd, right?
veterans a number of times, so it would be nice if we could get it done, Ted. That would be nice.
Okay,
And all of our veterans that I've spoken to on this are in total favor of having this. They know what these dogs go through and do. These dogs come back after their service and usually live with the soldier they were with while in the service and become part of their lives and part of their home families, so. And they do us a big service, so I'd like to honor them.
I got you the picture of the dog.
I have some here, but thank you. Okay, that would complete the city manager's report.
German Shepherd.
Okay, With that, I need a motion to open to the public.
Oh, second.
Roll call.
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilman Pataglia.
Aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Hi. Anybody from the public who'd like to speak now, please come forward and give your name and address to the clerk. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, good evening, Mayor,
Sir.
Deputy Mayor, okay, council people. My name is Dave Hayes. We live at 228 Lewis Street, Hackensack. We've been residents of Hackensack more than 40 years, at that location more than 38 years. In the last couple of years, we've been having some problems as far as anonymous calls in terms of what's going on our property, in our backyard. We've gone and talked to Albarelli. He says, okay, it's no big deal, don't worry about it. Next thing that's been happening is that I feel we're getting invalid parking tickets on Lewis Street. Now, what I did is I submitted a letter to the city manager with pictures and photographs of how the cars were parked, when they were parked, and the actual time. The thing that really broke the back, my back and my wife's back, is the fact that we got a ticket at 8:25 in the morning, and the sign, right underneath the sign, it says from 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock. Now, are these guys, excuse my language, are these police officers making up their own rules in terms of what the law is? Because for us to answer this, for me to answer this, it's costing me a lot of money, okay? And the fact that court is only open in the afternoons, on Monday afternoons, and this week it's open 1 o'clock. So what happens, who gets paid for lost wages in answering these, what we call invalid complaints? And even more than that is on one of these tickets, I got no notification whatsoever to the fact that you were reporting my delinquency to the state of New Jersey. So therefore, they suspended the registration of my car. So I can't even drive my car. So therefore, with the cost of going to court, the cost of the ticket, the cost to the state of New Jersey for an invalid ticket, how do I answer that? Or how do you answer that to me? Okay? Next. We haven't complained a lot in these 38 years that we've been there. But things are happening now that I'm beginning to wonder what is going on. Now, specifically, is it Lewis Street? Well, you just did a fantastic job repaving Lewis Street. Thank you very much. Okay? It's in great shape. But now, what's going on in terms of what I think is the normal customer service for the residents? And this situation, or these situations, is something that's causing my ear, as you can imagine. Another thing that's happening, stray cats.
Mr. Lewis, I have to stop you because you're at your 3-minute limit, but if you
Okay.
have more,
Fine.
you need,
No?
I want you
Okay.
to contact the city manager.
I did, okay?
But write your other issues down, like I just heard you say stray cats and service, because we're interested in what you have to say about it. It's just that I need to make sure that the rest of the public gets a chance to speak as well.
Okay, well, I'm still looking for a response. I submitted that letter to you more than 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago.
We're going to get to the bottom of it, I promise you that,
Fine,
okay?
thank you.
And my answer would be, and this is my answer, and I'll say it publicly, if a police officer is writing tickets before the 9 o'clock enforcement time, my answer to the payment would come out of his pocket if it was my choice.
Well,
It's not, but that's
well,
my,
how do I answer the fact that I have to go see Judge
I
Denise
agree with you
Thursday
100%.
afternoon at
I-
1 o'clock?
If,
Okay?
if that in
Lost
fact is
wages?
true, I agree with you 100% that it's wrong and it's
How do
not
I-
fair.
Okay, how do I get compensated for lost wages?
I'm going to let this man figure that out.
Sir, would you just
One
do me a
question,
favor?
Mr. Hayes, is
Yes.
this always on street cleaning days? The reason that you have to move by 9 AM, is this because of street cleaning?
Yeah.
Yes,
right,
okay, so these are always
Now-
on
now-
street cleaning days. I'm
Now,
just-
since you said that, let me just, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay?
Not a problem.
But this day that my daughter gets the ticket, they didn't even come to clean the streets,
Yeah, I love that one.
okay?
I get
We'll-
that on my
we'll
block
Get the
too.
information, I just wanted to clarify, thank you,
Okay,
Could you,
thank you.
thank you.
could you just provide me your cell number so I can reach out to you, because I'll call you first thing tomorrow morning.
Would the next speaker please step forward?
Good evening, everyone. Peter Marcazzani, Davis Avenue, neighbor of Dave Hayes on the corner. I wanted to say thanks to Al Dib for that wonderful presentation. I think it ties in with a note that I sent to all of the council members, the city manager, and also to Jim Mangan about how powerful some of the PowerPoint presentations can be if they're done well. I know the screen angle is still an issue, especially when it's something that's going to be broadcast, and it really is a tremendous opportunity for communicating with the public
Right.
who aren't in this room, and it's a tremendous feather in your cap. I think you'd want to take a close look at that and seeing if you can maintain that excellent level of communication. The other thing I mentioned in my note that I sent to you was there were two things that had to do with maybe a more professional presentation. One of them was the concept of pilots and what a pilot is and how these pilots are being doled out to the different developers in the city. And I had a number of questions in there. I'm not going to go into it now. I just wanted to mention here publicly that a lot of people, I'm sure, are confused. A lot of people, we know how many people come up here and say you're giving away the store when in fact you're not. I mean, any reasonable person would know you're not. It's just that it would be nice to know, in fact, how good these pilots are for the city. And again, trumpet those things a little bit more. So I would encourage you maybe to do that and even to use some examples, as to how they're structured. I mean, I assume they're all a matter of public record in terms
Absolutely.
of what the revenue is that's coming in and what the agreements are with each. And don't have to go into great detail, but one test case would be nice. The Capadalia property's up and running on State Street. That might be a good example to see what the payback is. I'm sure we are all getting sweaty palms now too with all of these wonderful presentations that Al brought up, and you're saying, well, how many school kids again? Run it by me one more time. And the issue that the city has with building a new school, but that's all going to happen. I mean, there's things that just have to happen to move the city forward, and I think you're definitely on the right track. There's just no question about it in my mind. Another brief mention I made was on assessments. I had remember the reval program that we had on the properties, and Jim had explained how we were going to try and approach the fair market value and get rid of all of these tax appeals. There was a revaluation of 100% of the properties, I guess maybe 4 years ago now, I'm not even sure. And that was going to be followed up by 1/3 of the residences or 1/3 of the properties being
rolling, yep.
evaluated every year. And then at the end of this 4-year period, then I think it was 4 or 5 years, whatever, we would be totally finished, I guess, with that process. But
Or
I
we
did
would
notice
decide
that-
to renew it if it was working.
Pardon?
Or we might decide to renew it if we feel it's working.
Well, I was wondering why I keep getting from the assessment company every
Right.
year a letter with the assessed value of my property, which when I went back and checked, I've been getting them for more years than I thought. I think they go back to 2010, and that surprised me because I wasn't paying any attention
No,
to
we
it.
instituted that.
We instituted the one
Well,
they may have done
yeah.
it once in 2010.
Yeah.
But the one we instituted was in 2013.
Yeah, you're right. Some of them
2014.
where the assessment never changed, but some letters were sent out by the prior administration, I think,
Right.
that came through. So are these going to continue then? I mean, obviously, I guess we reach a fair, what the state requirement is, there's a cost to the city to keep doing it, I guess. So,
Yeah, there's a cost, and the reason we were paying the cost was to help defray,
Right.
get the tax appeals off our plate, which it's done probably 50 to 60%, I would say.
Yeah.
Somewhere's in that range,
Good.
which is fantastic when
Yeah.
you're looking at where we were.
Sure.
But I would leave it up to our financial officer to really, for the input on
the
that,
contract
on whether we need to
5 years.
continue with it.
Well, I'm out of time, but I just want to mention just a couple more things. One is paving. I guess the list is being put together now for the street paving. I know there's different ways you do that. There's some things where you get monies. I think you have to pave certain streets and not others with that money. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But I do think Maple Avenue, from Pangbourne Place to the tracks, that thing has been a disaster for 2 years. Public Service has ripped it up at least 3 times, so they owe us a lot of money on fixing that one. My own street, Davis Avenue, which I would love to see done, but I don't want to be greedy, so don't do it in front of my house. Go from Lewis Street down to Main Street. That's really bad. And from Lewis Street up to Summit Avenue really needs, well, you need a hot tar seam. The middle of the street is opening up, just
Okay.
about a 4-inch gap all the way up the street there. And then I just want to mention one other thing, and that is the concept of a three-way stop street. Have you ever heard of a three-way stop street?
No.
Pangborn
three-way.
Place and Maple, and I saw one other one in town.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
saying
you're
to
right. I
myself,
do realize that,
How
yeah.
can you have a three-way stop street when you never know which approaching vehicle has a right-of-way?
Well, they say always a vehicle on the right, but that's kind of hard.
What about the vehicle down?
Exactly.
Especially Maple, where it's one way in one direction.
Right.
Something to take a look at. I don't know why you would do that. I mean, it's just another stop sign. You just make it a four-way.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, that's why I make
All
the
right.
big bucks.
Thank you, Pete.
We'll see you guys. Have a good night. I gotta go to a meeting. I'll see you.
Mayor, can I take a minute and ask Jim
Sure.
to step up, please?
Yeah, just real quick on the reassessment program. It was a 5-year program. It began in 2015, and the plan was that in 2015, we did a 100% reassessment citywide. And then over the next 4 years, we were doing what we call rolling reassessments. So when we did the first reassessment in 2015, that put what's called the director's ratio at 100%, which means homes are assessed at 100%, presumably 100% of the market value, okay? And then over the next 4 years, they continue reassessing homes. It's possible a home could be reassessed 4 times in the next 4 years, or some homes, 1 time, 2 times. The idea is that we keep on reassessing over that 4-year program to keep the to keep the assessed value as close to the market value as possible. If the assessed value matches the market value, then you have no basis for a tax appeal. That's the idea behind it. We do have 2 more years. The program runs through 2019. It's already paid for, so it's not one of those things where, well, maybe we can
Right.
cut it off early. It is already paid for. It was $950,000 for the 5-year program, and I've seen the results. It was the best $950,000 that was ever spent. Okay, but that's basically where we're at with the program. Okay.
Thank you. Next, please.
Regina DePasqua, Parker Avenue. I wasn't going to get up, but these 2 gentlemen got me here. So the reassessment is only for homes?
No, it's for everything.
Okay. Mr. Dibbs' thing, while he was doing it, I went on to the tax records. All these properties on Main Street, our most valuable property, their land, I'm just looking at their land assessments, have gone down or stayed the same. Meanwhile, mine keeps going up. Our most valuable property, and the pilots are paid on the property. Pilots are supposed to be paying on the property. Our most valuable property. I sat back there and took this list, first page, on Main Street. 76 Main Street, hasn't changed. 150 Main, gone down. 161 Main, went down. 210, the property. I'm not talking about building. Or they stayed the same. That is totally unfair to the homeowners. Totally. Our taxes, and I'm telling you it's the assessment, you can say whatever you want, but if your base is bigger, I don't care what the percentage is, the end result is going to be bigger. And the base assessment keeps getting bigger, and our taxes keep getting bigger. You can talk rate all you want. It's the assessments that keep increasing our taxes. And the fact that Main Street properties are not increasing is a slap in the face to homeowners in the city. And another slap in the face is that nobody came to that, you can wear all these things you want for Black History Month. Kids put on a great program today, a wonderful program, and not one of you came.
Want me to answer?
Go ahead.
Just briefly about taxes. Of course, while the properties are under construction, you're only valuing the land value at that time. And the pilot on those properties will be coming into fruition when they're occupied. And that is, the pilot is only, in particular, on the revenue that's produced by those properties. That's the way the process works. And so Pete, perhaps you were right, is that maybe maybe one time, Ted, we will have someone come and do a presentation on how pilots work. And you know, I know our redevelopment attorney, Brian Nelson, has done it a couple of times, but maybe we need to redo it again to just remind folks of how all of this works in particular. And, you know, Regina, when the assessed values are going up, the assessed values are going up in total. And the driving force is the monies that are being expended due to the budget increases. You know, just out of curiosity, I'll ask you in particular, from 2015 to 2017 on your home, have you seen a considerable increase in your taxes? I don't believe that you have. I believe it's a very, very small number. And if you want to go over that data with our tax person, please come into the city and talk to them. Regina?
We're not going, no back and forth, please, no back and forth, please.
Commercial?
Because you were speaking while she was speaking.
trying to
So
answer
she
you.
addressed you while you were speaking. You spoke out and she addressed you. We're
Commercial,
not allowing that. Thank
commercial
you.
properties as well as residential properties are all part of this process. Thank you.
I just want to add to that, and I have to disagree with the concept of raising somebody's property value is the only reason your taxes go up. That is not true. The tax levy number has gone down, your tax rate has gone down, and I got to ask you, I would ask the question, if your house value went down $100,000, you would be furious. You'd be saying we ruined the value of your house. So it's contradictory to say raising your house by $20,000 or $30,000 in its assessed value is causing all your problems. We're lowering the tax rate. I want my house, if my house was worth $250,000 or $300,000 last year, I want it to be worth $350,000 next year. That's just the way I am. Because when I go to sell my house, I want to get more money for it. And that money is certainly going to supersede any amount of small tax increase I may have gotten because the tax rate has dropped. That's my opinion. Anyway, next, please.
Salvatore Moretti. I used to reside at 390 Park Street. Just to go back a few years, and yet these are matters which are as current as a month ago when I spoke to Eric Kleiner about some litigation he had involving somebody in Hackensack. It is still going on, and I would just recall a moment to you that we built the apartment house at 391 Park Street in '58, and I attended George Washington University in 1960, and I went down there and I noted some Hackensack problems and some New Jersey problems because, of course, of our governor being the president. And they said, well, why don't you stop over to the White House? So I had spoken to several people in the university, and of course that's a metropolitan Washington D.C. area located on 19th Street through 22nd, so it's right next to the White House. So I worked down there for a few weeks, and I recall on one occasion I have been working for, I guess, 4 straight 8-hour shifts, which is like 32 hours. And I collapsed, and some of the people who were coming and going, they said, well, how come you're sleeping here? So they woke me up, and he said, well, why are you here? So I said, well, I was doing some work here, but so a voice came in, because they have, of course, intercoms in the White House, and said, well, he's been working here for a couple of weeks. And so they said, well, where do you live? Well, obviously, when you're going to school on 19th and 22nd Street, you're not concerned with the avenues because it's just 3 blocks away. So I walked back to the housing, which they have, which is mostly small housing for the students. At any rate, the point is that I also attended Supreme Court hearings before Judge Earl Warren and William O. Douglas. And although these matters may seem small to you, they are somewhat important because Mr. Ziza was, and I ran against each other. Oh, 3:05. Well, I'll have to sign off. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public like to speak? Seeing none, a motion to close, please.
Offer.
Need a second? Roll call?
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims. Councilman Pataglia. Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. All right, anybody have any comments before we leave? I was just looking through, and I'd just asked recently, I'd asked our CFO to send me the updated chart, if you recall. I wish I had sent it to Al Dib. I don't know if he's still here. I would have sent it to his computer. He could have put it up on the screen, but it would show where we are right now.
He's
But,
here.
Is he?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if he would get it fast enough. I don't see,
Updated chart for-
yeah, I don't have it on here. It says attached, but it doesn't show it on here.
Which chart are you looking for?
It was a tax chart that Jim had just sent me. You wouldn't have it, but anyway, maybe we can show it at the next session. But
We'll be updating it for the budget intro.
But it truly, when you look at that chart, and that's why I'd asked for it, because people are starting to question some stuff. I mean, you look at the spikes from 2005, the peaks, the valleys, the peaks, election year, it's all the way flat at zero, or at the bottom, not flat, but at the bottom, back up, back up. And since we've gotten in, it has gone, slight increase and then actually decreasing. So we're doing the right thing. There's no doubt in my mind, taxes will be in good shape in the next few years when these pilots all take hold and we start really seeing the revenue. Probably 2021, 2022, 2023, we'll really start to see a big difference. You're looking at, if you took all the revenue on the plan stuff, you're looking at $15 million a year in revenue to the city on a little over $100 million budget. That's just immense. It's huge. And obviously some of that money will go into infrastructure, but some of that money is going to go back to taxpayers. So that's huge. Anyway, with that, we will, I need a motion to go into closed session.
Offer.
Second. Roll call?
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilman Pataglia. Mayor LaBrus.
Aye.
Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to discuss certain actions under section 7B7 and 7B8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, which pertains to matters falling within attorney-client privilege, ongoing litigation, and personnel matters concerning the employment of a current or prospective public employee. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack is in the opinion that such circumstances may presently exist. And whereas the mayor and council wish to discuss the following issues: personnel matters, ongoing litigation, matters involving attorney-client privilege, matters involving the purchase, lease, or acquisition of real property, any pending or anticipated litigation or contract negotiations. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to exclude the public from this discussion. The outcome of the discussion will be disclosed within 90 days or at such a time as the interests of the city do not require confidentiality.
Thank you.
We have a resolution on tonight to resolve a couple of outstanding workers' compensation issues. I'll probably just briefly speak about that.
Yep, okay. Any other litigation or?
Not unless there's questions. I don't think I have anything particularly pressing at the moment.
Okay. See everybody at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I need a motion to come out of closed session, please.
Offer.
Second. Roll call?
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilman Pataglia.
Aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. Now I need a motion to close the council of the whole.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilwoman Von Rudenberg.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilman Pataglia.
Aye.
Mayor LaBrus.
Aye.
And I just want to add for the record, we did speak briefly about the Greenman case as well.
Thank you.